Good morning and or evening and or afternoon, I don't really know. As soon as I finish filming this intro, I'm going to bed. Before we begin with the content of this video, I want to make a prediction. And that prediction is that when I'm in the editing room, I'm going to name this video something to the effect of Anti-Wokeness ruins media criticism. Now, that's a bold claim, and I should probably be clear about what exactly I mean by that. So, allow me to be clear. Number one, this video is not going to be about how anti-wokeness or an obsession with anti-wokeness ruins creator spaces for particularly marginalized people. It does do that, but that's not the subject of today's video. Instead, I'm going to put the focus on how seemingly being anti-woke ruins a person's ability to interpret media at all. That when anti-woke creators make good media content, it's because they've forgotten to be anti-woke. I get the feeling I'm going to say woke and anti-woke so many times in this video, and that is going to suck, but we are going to power through together. Now, in order to demonstrate this issue, I'm going to show you a video from two different online creators. One from Jahns, or however that's pronounced, and one from The Critical Drinker, who eagle-eyed viewers will note that I have already responded to in a video about a year ago with legitimately the most atrocious lighting in any video ever in history. Kind of sucks because I feel like I made a couple of pretty decent points in there, but yeah, if you're ever gonna go back and watch that one, I would leave your phone in your pocket for that. But anyhow, a brief introduction to these creators. I don't really know much at all about either of their personal lives, but Jahns is a YouTube reviewer. He tends to go and see movies oftentimes early and then gives his basic, simple review of them. His videos tend to be around the 7 to 10 minute mark, and they don't tend to go into a whole lot of depth. And the reason that I picked a YouTube video that doesn't go into a whole lot of depth is because it should be very easy for a long-form, prepared YouTube response to do better than that. See, it just so happens that both of these creators have written reviews of Black Panther: Wakanda Forever. Jeremy's video is somewhere around 7 minutes long, and Critical Drinker's video is around 18 minutes long. Now, with 2.5 times the runtime and plenty more time to make the video, you would expect that the Critical Drinker would be playing on easy mode. He has every opportunity to make a decent analysis of this film. Not only that, Jeremy's media criticism tends to be fairly surface level, and I don't say that as an insult. He just tends to go based on his general impressions and thoughts. He discusses character, plot, setting, etc., but he doesn't go into a crazy amount of depth because that's not really the purpose of his reviews. It's kind of to give you a general impression of what the movie is going to make you feel. Yet even so, his Black Panther review managed to give infinitely more insight than anything the Critical Drinker seemingly can even dream of. So without further ado, let's take a look at both videos, come back, and compare notes.
A new character named Namor, or Namor. I know internet's like, his name is Namor, they call him Namor in the movie, but in the movie, some people call him Namor, some call him Namor. But he's from a super secret underwater civilization that's legally not Atlantis, though in the comic books it's Atlantis. But they can't say that.
I know it might seem kind of pointless that I'm pausing this here, but I actually think it's very interesting because a lot of people will accuse folks like this, or anyone really who gives a positive review of a Marvel or Disney movie, of being shills. And, well, those people definitely do exist. The fact that he's willing to make fun of the film suggests that maybe, just maybe, he went to a movie theater and saw a movie that he liked.
So I thought Namor was a good villain. I say that, I have to address it because it's an MCU villain, you know? It's usually, that's the caveat, where it's like, yeah, so weak part, the MCU villain. But there's definitely a conscious effort to make Namor part of the plot, you know? Make him a very big piece of this story.
And he immediately follows it up by complimenting the film's villain with respect to other MCU villains, which he implies are not very good. This is going to become even more relevant when we get to the Critical Drinker video, but I just want you to keep in mind that this is a person who is comparing their experience in this film with their experience in other films, and comparing and contrasting their various flaws and positive attributes. You know, the sort of thing that a critic might do.
Also, early on in the movie, when the troops do the first attack, I was like, oh, these guys are scary. I chalked that one up to the musical score as well. The music in this movie, I thought it was great. It was exciting when it needs to be. Also eerie when it needs to be.
Alright, I'm only stopping the fact that he complimented the music because I also reviewed this film, and I had some thoughts on the music, so I would definitely check that one out if you're curious why the music was so interesting to me.
Early on in this film, there's a moment where it establishes that a fulcrum in here is Shuri's scientific mind and her spiritual pain are conflicting. Or at the very least, there's friction among those two parts of her. And I was like, I'm in. This is... I think we've hit peak MCU existential crisis. Let's go.
Here, Jeremy thoughtfully and, I would argue, correctly outlines one of the film's core themes.
And then the movie's like, yeah, but we are the MCU, so we'll circle back around to that in about 2 hours.
And also recognizes that this is a Marvel film, and so it doesn't really address this theme very consistently. Alright, and at this point I feel like I'm kind of just like beating a dead horse, or, sorry, PETA, feeding a fed horse. This is a person drawing on their experiences from the film, comparing and contrasting them to other films, discussing ways the film could have been better, discussing ways the film worked. The review goes on for a few more minutes, but I think you get the point, right? This is a person talking about a movie they watched as a movie, as a piece of media put out into the world. So now let's contrast that with the critical drinker who seems to think that this is the 9/11 of cinema. I say as though he doesn't think that about every movie he doesn't like.
Black Panther was one of the biggest success stories in the entire MCU, helped in no small part by a stellar cast of extremely talented actors, a prime slot at the tail end of the Infinity Saga when the momentum of the franchise was virtually unstoppable. I mean, Jesus, if Captain Marvel could make over $1 billion, then I think we can safely conclude that people were willing to watch pretty much anything with the Marvel name slapped on it.
It is impossible to overstate just how much I love this introduction. He opens by complimenting the first Black Panther on its various positive elements, and yet somehow still finds a way to be angry at Captain Marvel. Like, dude, it's been 3 years. Not everything has to be about Brie Larson.
Whatever its objective merits, Black Panther was a smash hit with critics and audiences alike. The question is, what happens when you take away all those vital props and advantages and replace them with nothing at all?
Okay, maybe he's going to elaborate on this later in the video. Maybe we'll even discuss it in this video, but nothing at all? Really? The plot of Black Panther 2 was nothing like the plot of the first one. Not only that, as far as I can tell, it lost one major cast member, unless you're counting, I guess, what, Forrest Whitaker? I don't think he was in this one. Was Forrest Whitaker the emotional core of the first Black Panther?
And the most boring, forgettable MCU villain since this guy.
Okay, and this is why I pointed out Jeremy's response to the villain of this movie, because, forgettable? Really? You can criticize this character's motivations, and trust me, I had a lot of problems with Namor. Again, go check out my review. But forgettable? His personality, performance, fighting style, power style, and general appearance are completely different from, as far as I can tell, every other MCU villain. Like, I guess the character he would be closest to would be probably Killmonger, but I mean, they're completely different characters with entirely different personalities. You can hate him as the villain of this movie, but calling him forgettable feels like you just wanted to hate it.
The movie opens with Shuri working frantically in her lab in Wakanda. Her brother T'Challa is dying from an unknown illness, and the only thing that can save him is the magical bullshit herb that first turned him into Black Panther. It's a well-written, perfectly directed, and brilliantly acted scene that hits like a ton of bricks. And for a brief moment, it raised my hopes that this film was about to defy my expectations and give me something genuinely awesome. Then I saw the rest of it.
Alright, so he opens by complimenting the film's introductory scenes, which seem to be the scenes that, like, it's acceptable for everybody to like. So what I imagine happened, and even if he denies this, you know I'm right, is he was sitting in the theater, right? The trailers are going, and he's just fuming, right? He's vibrating with anger, right? He's about to watch the new woke Black Panther movie. And then the first scene opens, and it's pretty good. And he's enjoying it, and for a second, that anger melts away as he just gets engrossed into the plot of this film. He's enjoying it. It's emotionally resonant. He's actually affected by the events on screen. And then the first white guy comes on screen and somehow isn't the center of attention, and he just loses it. And all of that anger just comes flooding back, and he spends the rest of the film with smoke pouring out of his ears, grinding his teeth. Now, you might think that characterization is a bit unfair. What, you think his problem was that there was a white guy in the movie who wasn't immediately the hero? Well, I'll let you decide.
Skip forward a year or so, and all is not well in the Kingdom of Wakanda. Queen Ramonda attends a meeting at the UN to lay the smackdown on some toxic white males. Because, of course, what other demographic could they possibly be?
Yeah, the thing he's mad about is that the antagonists in the UN scene were white people. I have to assume that this is how, like, anti-SJWs think that we watch movies. That, like, we're in there, like, analyzing the race and gender of every single character in every scene, looking for something to be angry about. But, like, when woke people criticize the race politics of a film, they usually have historical examples to draw on, specific tropes that they're fulfilling. You know, a long-standing history of oppression, yada yada yada. But apparently the real problem with this scene is that a black woman was mad at a white guy. I don't think I can emphasize enough how ridiculous this reading of the scene is. The fact that the character who's being addressed as a white person literally isn't brought up in any way, shape, or form. And, as far as I remember, they're a representative of the UN from France, a vast majority white country, so it is not ridiculous that they would have a white representative at the UN. I'll take completely normal and unremarkable things for 500, Alex. Okay, and then he gets mad that apparently Wakanda is going back on its trade agreements, which suggests to me that he didn't watch the movie, like, at all. Because this scene literally cuts back and forth from the UN to, I believe, French troops literally trying to steal Wakandan resources. To the extent that she's going back on her word, she's going back on it because literally the rest of the world is trying to steal things from them. She's like, hey, this is an incredibly valuable and dangerous resource, and the fact that you're trying to steal it from me suggests that maybe you're not responsible enough to have it right now. Like, seriously, if you made an agreement with one of your friends that you were gonna sell them one of your guns, and then you see on the news that they call in a bomb threat at the post office, you're not an asshole for going back on that promise.
I'd like to point out that this is the same country who stood by and did precisely fuck all during multiple world-ending events, who refused to share any of their resources or technology with the impoverished African nations that border them.
And now we're complaining about the fact that Wakanda didn't intervene in multiple world-ending events. You know, the entire premise of the first movie? That's literally the emotional core of the first Black Panther, the fact that they don't help other countries, and they definitely should be. You know, an emotional core that culminates in them being the first line of defense against Thanos in Avengers Infinity War. Like, I'd love to watch other movies with this guy. You know, we're watching Empire Strikes Back, and he's like, wait a minute, that Darth Vader guy's trying to be friends with our protagonist, but didn't he blow up a planet in the first one? You know, but said in his accent. And it's like, yeah, he's the bad guy. That was the point of the scene.
It's a perfect example of a recurring phenomenon that I've noticed in the MCU in recent years that I can best describe as, it's okay when we do it. Failing to instantly distribute limited resources to a world population that effectively doubled overnight.
You've got to do better, Senator. You've got to step up.
But choosing to withhold vital natural resources that you have in such abundance that you could literally never exhaust them.
Wakanda forever!
At the beginning of this, I said that I was going to title this Anti-Wokeness Ruins Media Criticism, but I'm genuinely beginning to think that maybe I should just title it Not Watching the Movie Ruins Media Criticism. Like, I get the impression that people like this just think that woke people or lefties or whatever think that, like, black characters can't do bad things, when, in fact, if you want to make a compelling character, they have to, generally speaking, have some amount of flaws. So, like, whenever he sees a black character do a bad thing, he's like, ha! Look, the movie's doing it! It's just like, yeah, man, it's a movie. Characters do things sometimes.
Also, for some reason, characters keep claiming that Wakanda is the most powerful nation on Earth now, but I'm genuinely struggling to understand how they reached that conclusion. They're a small Central African country with a grand total of 1 city, and they go into battle armed with spears, shields, and rhinos.
Yeah, and also warships that are virtually indestructible to conventional weaponry. You know, the thing they're known for.
Ocean Man's angry because he doesn't want humans poking around his underwater kingdom and stealing all his vibranium, so he wants the Wakandans to help him track down the scientist who made the detector machine so that he can kill her. I mean, for a start, how exactly does Ocean Man know that this machine was constructed by one particular scientist?
Okay, at the beginning of the movie, Namor and his people commandeered a ship that may have had some amount of information on this scientist.
What purpose would it serve to kill or abduct her now? As far as he knows, she would have left behind drawings, blueprints, all kinds of designs and technical information that people could use to construct another one.
It's probably the case that his plan had more steps than just kill the scientist, but that's really all that's relevant to this movie, because there's not really a huge moral quandary about destroying blueprints. You know, our protagonists want to protect Riri because she's a person and they don't want her to die. They're probably not that concerned about some papers getting burned up and some files getting deleted.
Also, none of this means anything anyway because the Americans already know exactly where the vibranium is.
Okay, I got the impression that that there were more dimensions to this than just like, oh yeah, all of the vibranium is in one spot. The movie doesn't like seriously clarify this exactly, but I feel like that was the point, right? Is that like, oh yeah, they found one vibranium store, but like we don't want them to find all the other ones. But I call this out because this is a genuine nitpick. I mean, it's possible that the filmmakers literally didn't think about that, and that would be a mistake. But like, holy shit, man. This criticism was preceded by 7.5 minutes of just like complete bullshit. And yeah, you heard that right. We're only about 7.5 minutes in, so I think I'm gonna call it here. The video doesn't, like, become fantastic after this, you know? Like, as far as I'm aware, unless I'm missing something, it doesn't end with a scene of him saying, just kidding, all of that was a joke, actually, the movie was okay, or anything of that sort. So yeah, we'll call the criticism there, and I hope you sort of see what I mean. I feel the need, as, like, a hypothetical sociologist, to clarify that this isn't, like, all of the evidence you need to conclude that anti-wokeness ruins media criticism, but, like, I hope you understand what I'm getting at, right? That the perspective that people like The Critical Drinker have when they go into movies is like mind-numbingly silly. And that seemingly the only time that he paid attention to the thoughtful writing and direction and everything of the film was when he was forgetting to be anti-woke. I could probably say more, but I feel like I will arbitrarily cut it off here. Press the thumb button, press the red button, comment how much you think I'm a soy boy beta cuck in the comments. Oh, I said comment twice in that sentence. I'll re-record it. And yeah, see you in the next one.